My motorcycle was giving me grief. I could ride it about 2 miles before it began to feel like I was towing something, and I quickly had to pull over before the engine bogged down and stalled. However, as long as I was stationary, the bike would run fine, so I figured it had to be the rear brake. It's a simple system, this rear brake. It's a pedal, a master cylinder, a brake hose, and a caliper. So not too many parts to figure out. How hard could this be? Easy! I found I could simulate riding the bike by putting the bike up in the air, running it, while simultaneously applying the rear brake. This would heat the brake system and cause the wheel to lock up. The wheel is hard to rotate. If I immediately bled the brake fluid off, the wheel would once again spin freely. So something was getting stuck and it was heat dependent. Now brake fluid does expand when it heats up, and the excess expansion should expand into the brake fluid reservoir, which is why you're always supposed to have some free space in that reservoir. I began by taking the caliper off and disassembling that in case there was some kind of blockage in there. I even honed the cylinder walls. I put that back together, put it back on the bike, and while I was there, I put a new brake hose on this thing. Old hoses can essentially develop one-way valves as the inner walls deteriorate, yet still look fine on the outside. So in case that was going on here, we put on a whole new hose. With that done, I happily thought I had fixed it, parked it in the sun, and went to eat and relate my victory to others. Yeah, I totally fixed it. Yeah. Upon returning, I found that the sun had heated the brake system up and the rear brake was once again locked. Ugh. So I moved on to the master cylinder. I took it off the bike, took it apart, and determined the spring was having a hard time returning the piston. Because the master cylinder is essentially a little cylinder with a piston in it with some rubber grommets and a spring. Then when you let off the pedal, the spring is supposed to push the piston back out and allow fluid to return back into the reservoir. And my piston seemed to be getting stuck and not returning properly. So I sanded down the cylinder walls until that spring was able to return that piston adequately. I then installed that master cylinder back on the bike, put it out in the sun to bake, and it's still locked up. And then, to double matters, it started to leak. Why are you doing this to me, master cylinder? Alright, now we've ordered a cheap master cylinder off Amazon just to see if that is our issue. We can throw that in there. We can always upgrade to a better master cylinder later. Now they don't make master cylinders for my bike anymore, so I had to order a generic one and make an adapter plate to adapt it to my motorcycle frame. But yeah, you can see now that I've got it off the bike, it's just like an 1/8 inch piece of plate here. With that installed, put it back out in the sun to bake, and it didn't lock up. It's passed the first test. Hooray! Now, second test, do some laps of the house and drag the brakes the whole time. Heat up that rotor and see if that will transfer heat into the system and lock things up. But it doesn't. Second test, passed. It's fixed. All right, we got some good news because I've been driving this around the yard, just doing circles of the house, and I've been dragging the rear brake. We've got the whole time just dragged the rear brake, and this is like cooking egg hot. That rotor, this thing is nice and warm. That's pretty warm, and then but it still rolls. And then this guy, it expanded because I had this down here. It was just below the upper limit, and it expanded to the point where it was trying to come out the cap here. So I need to take some fluid out of there. But the good news is that the fluid is expanding back through the master cylinder and expanding up into the reservoir here, which is what you want. That's how it's supposed to operate. Our brake system is finally working. The Goldwing is finally complete. Yes. Now we're back on the road, baby.